Oh, we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from. And welcome to this really special webinar that we've got today on making AI troubleshooting work for you. I'm going to leave it a couple of minutes just for everyone to kind of join and get comfortable. Let us know in the comments where you're joining us from. I'm joining from London. Benjamin, Colby, where are you guys joining from?
I'm based in New Jersey, United States.
And I'm in Missoula, Montana.
Nice mixture going on there.
Yeah, we have almost follow the sun coverage in this webinar so far. I feel like we should have done like hype music or something like that. Like they do it all the political, like some Fleetwood Mac in the background. It's like, don't stop thinking about tomorrow as we're waiting for people to join our webinar.
Problem is we've got to deal with the lawsuits after that for using the copyright.
Exactly. I hope I didn't, like by mentioning the name of the band, I hope I didn't put Salesforce Ben in any legal trouble.
No, I'm sure a random mention will be fine.
It's funny that you chose that because I was thinking elevator music. Your sounds a little bit more entertaining, Colby.
So my like default background music is the elevator music version of Girl from Ipanema that's in Blues Brothers whenever I'm sort of standing around waiting. It's one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever.
Oh, I think that should be enough time. I think everyone that's joined has hopefully joined. Yeah, so welcome everyone. My name's Andrew Cook. I'm the Salesforce Technical Instructor at Salesforce Ben. And welcome to this webinar, which, if I'm honest, I would have probably liked to have seen a few years ago when I was more of a Salesforce admin, because these are the sort of topics that you need, and you need to get your head around, and it's just something that is going to be so useful for everyone joining. Yeah, so Benjamin, Colby, over to you guys.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Benjamin Zeitz. I'm the head of revenue operations here at Sweep. I've been working in the Salesforce ecosystem for almost 10 years now. First started at a company called FounderShield and started up their systems team, moved over to a company called Axonius, where I started the business operations team and helped them scale from about 20 employees to about 350 in just over 2 years. And what that really taught me was what happens when Salesforce architecture isn't built 100% perfectly, which led me to my current role at Sweep, where I work with our internal team and hundreds of customers in defining the perfect Salesforce architecture for them. And I've gotten a lot of exposure to how to use AI to troubleshoot Salesforce, and I'm excited to share that all with you today.
Good stuff. Thanks, Benjamin. Hi, all. I'm Colby Ricker. I have been in the Salesforce ecosystem. This is lucky number 13 for me. I have been in the SI space for most of that time. So helped found a company called Vertiva. From there, helped build the Salesforce practice at PwC. Helped build the global Salesforce practice at Slalom. And so over the course of that time, I would say I've done pretty much everything there is to do in the Salesforce ecosystem. I've done sort of 5-person, tech startup, sales cloud, quick starts. I've done, large scale digital transformation projects for the Fortune 500. So really have kind of seen the platform from all sides. Over the course of that experience, one of the things that really just began to strike me as I sort of got to years, 11, 12, 13, over time, I would say every client runs into really similar problems on the platform, and they all struggle to some extent, to varying extents, but to get value out of the platform. The best client implementations that I ever saw always started and stopped with a really deep understanding of the process. And so when I saw what Sweep does and some of the stuff that we'll walk through today, I was sort of in a, if you can't beat them, join them mode. And I joined the team full time a couple months ago. So thank you all for joining. To give you just sort of an overview of what we're going to cover today, we're going to start by sharing our perspective on the state of the ecosystem and just talk a little bit about how things have evolved from sort of where they were to where they are. We're then going to talk a little bit about how AI can help you make sense of even the gnarliest of Salesforce orgs. Disclaimer on the AI talk as we get in, we do have actual use cases. I know that word gets thrown around a lot to the point where it's almost meaningless, but we have some really practical stuff that we're going to talk you through today. And then we'll wrap up just really with an introduction to our product and kind of try to tie all that together. So kicking off the state of the state bit, it's not just you. I mean, things really are harder in the ecosystem. And we're going to talk today a little bit about our perspective on why. It really centers around three things, right? Over the last, I would say 5 to 7 years, especially, the Salesforce platform has just gotten much, much more technical. Resources supporting the platforms within customer companies of Salesforce are becoming more scarce. And I would say that all of those things are sort of multiplied by the fact that Salesforce is now critical infrastructure. So we're going to dig into each of these in a little bit more detail, starting with the increased technical complexity of Salesforce. So if you think about it, since probably 2015, workflows have been replaced with flows, page layouts have been replaced with lightning pages. All of this means the gap between a business user raising their hand and saying like, hey, can we do this? And someone supporting the platform saying, sure, and here's how I'm going to do it. That sort of, the time between point A and point B there has gotten much, much wider. If you add to this just some of the gross proliferation of products, right? So I go back in the ecosystem far enough to when you would have to explain to people like, no, like Salesforce, that's just the name, but like it really does more than just sales. A decade ago, Salesforce did marketing, sales, and service. Maybe sales and service if you're scoring by things that are actually on login.salesforce.com, but they had a marketing cloud product. Now they do AI and collaboration and documents and AI and analytics and integrations and AI. And did I mention that Salesforce does AI now? Point is, the average Salesforce org now is both wider and deeper than the platform as a whole was, as recently as we'll call it 2011, 2015, maybe. Add to that, mature orgs have been around for 10 plus years. So beyond the fact that they've just sort of grown in complexity sort of over natural time, you think about some of these orgs have had maybe 5 SI partners and sort of a rotating cast of thousands internally managing them. Especially the SI partners, a lot of times the documentation that they provide, if at all, is lacking. It tends to not get updated. And the bottom line is there's just a lot being done on the Salesforce platform. There's not a lot of good notes on how it works. And the underlying technical structures are more and more complex. So now you start to look at, the teams that support these orgs, and they're suddenly more resource constrained than they have been. So the pandemic really brought what might have been the greatest period of investment in business technology in the history of the world. We're right now in sort of the hangover period after that party, which folks who were at the Salesforce Ben happy hour last week may or may not appreciate. The net is right now budgets are tighter and they're facing higher scrutiny for all internal spend, but especially in technology where there was so much money spent on those things to kind of respond to some of the remote work demands and we'll say remote commerce demands of the pandemic. As these budgets tighten, it means a couple of things. It means less support from partners, or it means sort of a rapid end to partner support, where an existing maybe SI team or managed service team could have been kicked out, or they've sort of replaced to lower cost resources. And a lot of those transitions happen very quickly and with very little knowledge transfer. Finally, internal teams are being staffed by more and more junior people. And like I saw some thread on LinkedIn the other day about a company that was trying to hire a Salesforce admin with 5 years experience for less than $100,000. And if someone from that company is here today, I wish you the best of luck. The point is, belts are tightening and teams are being expected to keep pace or even accelerate delivery rather with fewer resources. The last point that I'll make here is Salesforce is critical infrastructure. So when I started in the ecosystem, I knew sales leaders that would go out and buy Salesforce on their corporate Amex, and IT was sort of okay with it as long as Salesforce didn't integrate with anything. When we were starting the Salesforce practice at PwC, which is an audit firm, that practice gained traction largely because none of the accounting partners there could conceive a world where CRM data would be material to audit or financial performance. I don't want to kick our friends at the mothership while they're down, but anyone with RSUs had a really bad day a couple of weeks ago, right? Salesforce missed on their revenue number and their stock dropped more than 20% in a day. That revenue number came out of Org62. It came out of Salesforce's internal Salesforce org, right? Like things that are in Salesforce are material to the street. And that means a whole bunch of things, but not least of which is sort of the days of admin permissions for all are hopefully behind us. Quick disclaimer, if you're not beyond that point, we should really talk. Anyway, beyond being mission critical to business, Salesforce is now integrated with everything, and IT teams have formed COEs around the platform. We add to this a world where business is just moving so much faster, requires front office systems to be much, much more responsive. And you have in Salesforce a system where, one, you can't break things. Two, the platform is now somewhere between a brain and a spinal cord for most companies. And three, Salesforce has to be flexible enough to keep up with these modern GTM motions, which are evolving incredibly fast. So the point is, the stakes on the platform have really never been higher. Hopefully that's sort of enough emotional deepening around, how hard things have gotten out there. But the good news is there are some things that you can do to respond to this. So if you run a team, you need to start leveling them up technically. This could mean, certainly trailheads, but also digging into topics like computer and data science. Flows as an example. It really requires understanding of programmatic thinking in a way that maybe workflows never did. So really start to up-level your team's deeper technical skills. Add leverage to your team. Find tools that can make them more productive. Invest in product owners and business analysts. This is really just code for get closer to the business. In the current climate, you just have to know as much about the business as you do about the technology, and in some cases more. So AI can really offer a way to do things, and this is some of what Benjamin is going to talk about, but a lot of it starts just by turning Salesforce into a visual workspace and allowing it. I talked about sort of the time between an idea and implementation, shortening that time again. Okay, so it is 2024, so obviously we can't have a tech webinar without talking about AI, so here we go. All kidding aside, AI really can help in these domains. It can help you accelerate the development of a junior resource, so really helping with upskilling of your team. It can add scale, so not only can it make a junior person sort of perform a little bit more senior, but it can make a senior person just more productive. Each team member can get more done, and it can also make a business person more technical and a technical person more sort of business oriented. So all of that kind of looks to getting to answers and getting to solutions faster and easier. So that's kind of the overview of the ecosystem. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Benjamin, who's going to take us through how AI can help.
Okay, so like Colby alluded to before, on every webinar you've been on about AI, everybody's talking about AI, every company is talking about AI, but what a lot of people are lacking are some real clear-cut ways that we can leverage AI to help us in our day-to-day, right? AI is going to take over the workforce, but how? And what can we do to harness it now and make us more productive, make us more efficient, et cetera. So I'm gonna use 3 terms repeatedly over the course of the rest of the webinar, and those are on the screen right now: chatbots, instant documentation, visualization. All of these are usages of AI that we are internally leveraging, for example, in order to achieve things in a better, faster manner. So I'm going to take you through, next slide, please, Colby, what this looks like in real life. We're going to walk through a scenario that I had with a customer. The names of the people and company have been changed to protect the innocent. And we're going to walk through how AI helped solve a problem for my friend Max. So I want you to meet Max, and just so you get an understanding of who Max is, she is an accidental admin. She's certified on Salesforce several times over, and she joined her new company, which we'll call Universal Containers, just about a month ago, and she's leading their Salesforce org. She is truly an expert in Flow. She can write code. She's never been hired as a developer, but she's very, very comfortable reading Apex, writing Apex, and the like. And she's already finished her onboarding, so she is on her own. Okay, Colby. And she's a few days into finishing her onboarding, and she gets this email, which you see in the bottom right-hand corner. Comes from her VP of sales. I've gotten emails similar to this many times in my life. It usually starts with the term Salesforce is broken, but here our VP of sales is trying to move a deal to close one, and they're getting blocked by some error message, which they really don't understand. This in the eyes of the VP is preventing them from hitting their number for the quarter. It's extremely urgent. It's a 3 siren fire drill. Drop everything right now and fix this. And to the next slide, Colby. And I'm going to just zoom in and share what this error message says. It says that we can't save this record because of, and we see the name of what here is a flow, op after create and after update. We parse a little further. We're missing a required field, the close date. And then if anybody can just take a look at these SOAP API Developer Guide error IDs, and they know exactly what's going on, kudos to you. I can't. I definitely need to go hunt and figure out exactly what's going on with this error message. We've got a flow to look at. We've got a field to find in that flow, and we've got some sort of error message that we need to better understand. Okay, Colby, next slide. And so there's the old way to solve it, right? You could read through the error message, check the flow listed. Here's a screenshot of not even the whole flow, but parts of the flow that Max had to look through. So you can see and you can tell by the name, after create, after update, it's going to be a flow that does a lot of very different things. It's a big flow. So to be able to go and find the close date field, which is ultimately going to be, the most crucial step here, there's a lot of work to do. Maybe Max can run it through the debug logs, and sometimes that helps, and great, you're done. Oftentimes, you still need to go dig more. Max also had technical documentation, which she was able to spend some time with here. But that documentation wasn't really so up to date as she found after spending some time in there reading and seeing things that weren't aligned with what she was seeing in the flow. And so to the next slide, please. And so in reality, what is Max going to experience? I'm going to put it in my terms. When this happens to me, I panic. My face turns bright red, even though I'm sitting by myself at my screen and nobody's looking at me. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I do next? And then I start to hit the ground running. And so, let's think through Max's logic. How can the close date field ever be missing, right? She's looking at this record and the close date field is not missing. That's clue number one. She's going to go through the flow and try to figure out all that she needs. But while she's doing that, she needs to stop every other urgent task that she had for the day, right? She needs to communicate with all of her stakeholders. She needs to make sure that the VP of sales understands what she's doing when she's doing it, and communicate outwards the timeline on when she can actually fix and resolve this. And all this is to say is, if you're an admin, if you're on this call and you've been an admin, you've been a developer, and you've run into experience like this, it's not just solving the issue, right? There are so many things going on your day to day, and we need to be as efficient as possible in being able to solve this. Now, I'm going to fast forward to the end of the story for a moment from here, which is that in Max's case, the issue that she had was her flow was trying to create a renewal opportunity, and the close date field was using an end date field that was null. So obviously that's going to cause the close date to fail. But what's really interesting was this flow was using the wrong end date field. There were multiple end date fields in this org. So not only did Max have to replace the end date field in that flow, she has to find the end date everywhere in her entire org and replace it everywhere where it is to avoid issues like this in the future. Max was really ambitious, and she said, well, actually, it looks like duplicate fields are a major problem in this org, not just in this flow. And she started a project about getting rid of all duplicate fields in her org. And, in this org, there were 600 plus fields on the opportunity object. So as you can imagine, these are problems that are actually just like a symptom. There's something much larger underneath that needs to be resolved. Next slide, please, Colby. So think about how much time this could take Max with the old way, right? Before introducing AI, right? Maybe you're spending some time with debug logs, running different scenarios through the debug logs, trying to really understand what's going wrong here. Maybe you're digging through some technical documentation if you're lucky to have it and it's up to date. If you have to go and find the close date field in that flow, the one from the screenshot earlier on the side, that could take you several hours unless you click somewhere and get lucky. And then really where we spend most of our time is assessing the impact. What's going to happen when I make this change? What game of whack-a-mole am I opening up? If I fix this here, what error is that going to cause somewhere else? Are those things critical? And really assessing, okay, what's my game plan for making changes here? And then actually, ironically, the smallest amount of time is spent making changes, right? You go ahead, you make those changes, and you move forward. We're talking about something in a bad case scenario that can take your entire day. It could take 6 hours, and that's not the entire day, but it's pretty darn near close it. And that's just not acceptable for the expectations that our businesses have of us today. So the next slide, please. So what can we do to help, right? So there's a new way to do things. And what we're showing here with this GIF, this is Sweep's example of how we can sort of start to get to the bottom of this problem. But by visualizing processes, by giving the end user context of marrying the business and the technical, as well as the ability to really click and narrow down and zoom into the specific aspects that they need in an extremely, extremely quick manner, is extremely helpful. And one thing that we think at Sweep is, while I could go and take my error message and throw it into ChatGPT, and I will get some help from doing that, what ChatGPT lacks is an understanding of your entire org, right? We talked about assessing impact before. We talked about the fact that every change I make is going to have impacts that reverberate across my org. So if we're going to leverage AI, it's really important that the AI understands everything that we're working with, and not just an error message, and not just a specific flow or Apex class. So to the next slide, please. This is the state that we want to get you to, right? You're able to run through the debug logs pretty quickly. You spend a lot less time on documentation because you know that it's up to date and you know that it's live. We don't want you to spend any time really digging through the flow. We want to help you assess the impact as quickly as possible, and then you can go ahead and make those changes, right? So now the making changes part goes from being the shortest part of the process to the longest part of the process. And our goal really is to take an example like this and have you accomplish it in under an hour. So I'm going to walk you through how Max was able to leverage Sweep in this exact example. And based on the questions that we're asking, and I even have some screenshots of some of the outputs that she received, you will understand how this 45 minutes, which seems like a dream, is really just a reality. Next slide, please. So like I said before, we're going to talk about chatbots, right? So we can dive in and we can ask, what does this error message mean, right? Understand what's going wrong. Going back to our example, that's how we're going to figure out, okay, we've got a record create here, and we've got an issue with our close date field. What does this flow do? So understanding the entire context of the flow. What is everything else that's happening in this flow? What's going to happen if I make a change to this flow? Having that context outright is also really important. Then we're going to find the close date field. There's no more clicking node to node to find where we're using the close date field. It will tell us where the close date field is, and we can go and find it on the canvas as quickly as possible. Then comes the impact analysis. Okay, where else are these fields used? What do they do? And from there, we can actually go implement our changes, test them in a test environment, and deploy them to production, and hotfix is over. Next slide, please. So here, I hope you can see it, but these are kind of some of the prompts that went through. So what does this error message mean? And if you're zooming in, because I need to lean in first, you can see that there's a flow failure, there's a record creation attempt, and there's missing required fields. So boom, right away, one question, spit back answer from the AI. We got down to what the problem was here. And they even gave us some things to check at the end, right? So action items, verify the field mappings, ensure that the close date is correctly mapped to a valid date value. Also check the fields that the end date on the record is not null or empty. Next slide, please. Then we, what does this flow do? This is actually a screenshot from Sweep. So you can see that's kind of default whenever I open up any flow, any Apex class, any trigger, workflow rules, process builders, you name it. And so it gave us like a high level of what's going on with this flow. And also, it also read through every single field that's used in the flow. And I can start to click into the fields and understand the impacts of each of those. And the next slide, please. And then this one was a major time saver. List all elements in the flow that use the close date field. It got cut off in the picture here, but you can see there's one element, one node, if you will. Create the next renewal action, and there was also, and that's where the end date field was mapped to the close date, and there was also the assignment node. So this was really a needle in a haystack. There were hundreds of elements in this flow, and it was used in 2 of them. If you're going through and clicking, you might have some issues. So we were actually able to go and then open the flow and just Control F, Command F, depending if you're a Mac or PC person, and get directly to the elements that we needed to change. And lastly, on the next slide, from the impact analysis, we were able to look at the end date field. We can see this field is actually only used, thankfully, in this singular flow. It's used in these page layouts and was also used cut off underneath in a process builder and a workflow rule. So we had a few places to replace this field. We had to understand what each of those automations were doing. But relatively, at the end of the day, people were, when building in this org, had been using the right field almost all the time, not all the time, almost all of the time. So we were able to help Max get to this issue, get to the bottom of this issue extremely, extremely quickly. And that is like a really practical use case using several different types of tools that help us troubleshoot a very real problem in Salesforce and help us save a lot of time. I hope for everybody that's like a pretty clear use case, and maybe you have analogous use cases, and we're going to get to the Q&A pretty soon. And you guys can ask questions and the like. Before I do that, I do have one more slide, which is, this was the troubleshooting use case was a very reactive use case. And Colby, if we could advance to the next slide. But we also want to make sure that we can leverage these tools proactively so that it doesn't come to the email of the email from the VP of sales and starting a fire drill and making you feel like your hair is on fire. And in my case, making your face turn totally red, even though you're sitting in a room all by yourself. Some of the things that you can do to avoid this are also leveraging these exact same tools, right? Finding, it would have probably been helpful for Max had she seen that, hey, there was this field that was called end date __C that wasn't really being used ever. But it was being used in automations. So we can leverage the documentation, field usage history, and things like that, all using AI to avoid those problems in the first place. Find places where we're not following best practices. Finding places where we have code that's written that hasn't been triggered in the year. Figuring out, am I writing this formula the right way, or is it going to cause compile limits? I don't know. There are lots of examples that you can use to leverage. To help leverage AI in order to do things proactively, so that we don't have to be in this full troubleshooting phase. Also, obviously relevant when you're in the testing phase. So when you're building something new and you're testing for the first time, you can start to leverage the AI to make sure that we're not causing any downstream problems. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Colby.
Good stuff. Thank you, Benjamin. So just to wrap up before we get to Q&A, quick recap of what we talked about. Salesforce is much harder than it used to be because it's more technically complex. Teams are resource constrained, and it is increasingly mission critical to the companies that use it. To address this, you can invest in up-leveling technically. You can add leverage to your teams, and you can kind of invest in both relationships and experience with the business. AI can help you do all this by shortening onboard, multiplying a person's productivity, and providing visual tools that make it easier to communicate and collaborate between IT and the business. So that's our talk. That's what we wanted to cover today. Thank you all for listening. I think we're going to open it up for questions now. Just as we get started, I've seen a couple in the chat that I think get to pretty quick. Darren asked if we follow Salesforce trust policy in protecting customer data. Yes, absolutely. We do not actually pull data into what we do. All we look at is metadata. So all customer data remains on the Salesforce platform and sort of within the trust wrapper that is Salesforce. Scott asked about partner license pricing. Yes, there is some available, Scott. Please feel free to reach out to me after the webinar and we can talk about it in more detail. And then Darren also asked about our generative AI capabilities. We have a model that we've trained on Salesforce metadata that we use within Sweep. So again, we're not sending Salesforce data sort of out into the wild.
And Colby, I'm just going to hop in and just give for the people who missed it. So Sweep is a visual platform to help manage your Salesforce instance. It leverages AI in a lot of places to help us do this, but it's really a place for partners, end users, whomever, to really manage end-to-end everything they need in a Salesforce instance.
Andrew, are you good if I just keep running through questions in chat? Do we want to sort of MC this a little bit more?
Yeah, I've actually seen as I'm in here, so I thought I'd ask a question that's come to me.
Yeah, please do.
Bit selfish, I know, but I'm here, so I can. This has come up from me thinking about how at my last company how we used Salesforce a lot with integrations and external systems. I was just wondering how Sweep kind of worked in that kind of scenario where there's maybe there's a flow, or you've got Apex that's interacting with some integrations, and it's the integrations that are causing the issues. How would Sweep deal with those kind of scenarios?
It's a great question. And the answer obviously is it depends. So it depends what those integrations are and where the code for those integrations are hosted. If it's behind a managed package, much harder for us to see. If, for example, I know like the Calendly integration deploys flows to your Salesforce org. So that's something that we can see and read. The answer is it does depends. The answer is that it depends. However, anything that is code that is exposed, code flow, workflow rule that is exposed in Salesforce, we're able to see, understand, and account for it as well.
Amazing. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Benjamin.
My pleasure.
Right, another question we've got is, how can I use AI to manage an inherited Salesforce environment? I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are wondering this kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe I'll take a crack at that. I mean, I think and this is from my SI perspective, right? Like where a lot of the work that I would do is sort of come into an organization where someone has already done an implementation, I'm kind of taking over. Understanding what's been built is always kind of the first step. A lot of what Sweep does is provide visibility into what's been built in a Salesforce org. So some of the stuff that Benjamin took us through, just sort of discoverability, right? Like, what is this flow? What does this flow do? What fields does it use? Answering those questions is, I think, really core to the product. Benjamin, I'm trying to get my demo org up. Are you able to maybe log in and take us through just sort of a quick view of some of the technical discovery? Because I think seeing some of that makes it much more real.
Yes.
While Benjamin's doing that, there's been a question about having access to a demo. So I'm just going to paste the URL in the chat that you can go to and try it out for yourself from there.
Yeah, and while we're I did see one about the freemium offer. Just to clarify that question, we basically have a read-only view. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to go through around just discovery and documentation, those are available in the free admin tools, which I believe Andrew just shared the link to.
I can share my screen for a second to show Sweep. And let me know when you guys are seeing my screen. Okay, so on the left-hand side, there's you'll see a bunch of different tabs. We've really been focused today on the documentation tab, but sort of just to show as an example, I can come in to the opportunity object. I can look at any field and sort of see that same idea of where is this used, right? And this is all within custom fields, standard fields. It doesn't matter. We do all of those. And here we can see we've got the AI generated description of a flow. We've got the AI chatbot at the bottom that we could ask questions to. And here's one that I love. It's a pre-built prompt, but list all of the fields that are updated via this flow. You can get even more specific, list all the fields that are updated by this flow and the element that they're used in. And in a few seconds, we're going to get a full list of fields that are updated by the flow. And here you can see there are also fields that are created there. And so that just a quick, minute on how exactly we get to those sorts of outputs from the screenshots that we showed. And then also on the left-hand side, we also have some of the tools for remediation. So automate, dealing with automations, alerts, our Slack integration enables you to update Salesforce from Slack, things like that as well.
And I'll, sorry for dropping there for a second. I tried to log in so I could respond to comments, and I apparently left the meeting. So I'm back. I apologize.
Awesome. Do we have some more questions, Andrew, that we missed?
Yeah, there's a couple more. So, what else can I do to get end users to adopt a more collaborative approach?
Could I actually maybe ask for a little bit more detail on that? Just like you getting sort of a stiff arm, maybe provide kind of an example. It's a pretty broad question. And if the answer is not, I can totally vamp from there. But just to be more specific, I would love some more detail if someone wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, there's not any more details added to that, unfortunately.
Fair enough then. What I would say is I have starting with a common understanding of what the problem is usually the best place to kind of bring people to the table. If you can prepare something that shows a picture of what you're looking to discuss, and then walk through the picture and say, is this working as you expect, or where do you see problems? How would you like it to work? Starting with that task of really understanding kind of what the problem is and I'll say the plight of the person across the table from you tends to invite people into the discussion a little bit more. And I think that's one of the powerful things about Sweep is that it is representing some very complex technical things in very straightforward pictures that people can understand, even if they have no idea what the difference between a flow and an apex trigger is. So I would say, if you want to kind of ask people to be more collaborative, start by bringing them something that makes it a little bit easier for them to collaborate. And pictures are usually a really good place to start.
And just to pile on, like that's a big aspect of some of the stuff that we do at Sweep. I'm assuming someone was clicking around on our site when they asked that question. We're able to bring, maybe I'll share my screen quickly one more time, maybe not one more time, but again. And I just want to make sure that I'm sharing the right window here, and I am. So you saw in the in one of the screenshots, I think in the presentation, kind of this like process mapping, flowchart like visualization of a business process. And this is actually a collaborative workspace. So first of all, we're able to set access for people to come in here and view, hey, how does this process work? What are, enable them to like leave comments so they can better understand how the process works. They can understand any validations and automations that occur here. This will probably be a better one for automations that occur at certain steps in the process, to be able to really understand and work together to define what it is that this org needs to do, right? So here I can tag my VP of sales with a question that says like, hey, Mr. VP, please let me know if there are any other requirements to move from this stage, right? And I can get that response back in line, back here in the place where I'm defining my process. And then it's just a click away from being live in my Salesforce org.
Yeah, on that, I'll sort of wrap up my answer just by saying, if you want to invite someone to collaborate, you really need to understand kind of what is important to them. And so if you're going to go and try to solve a problem with them, even if it's a technical problem, figuring out how to express it in their terms so they can understand how helping you helps them is one of the best ways that I've ever seen to invite people to collaborate. Like, people will not, especially if folks, this isn't their day job, like they want to know that you can help them with their problem. And so if you go to them and try to address maybe a challenge that you're facing in their terms, I find much more productive conversations. Great question, by the way. Very open-ended. Andrew, how are we doing? Is that the balance of it, or do we have any more?
Just one more question that is it's quite a generic one, which is quite nice. In terms of leveling up sort of technical skills in Salesforce, what sort of resources would you recommend? Obviously, there's Trailhead, but besides that, are there any other sort of resources that you'd kind of have as a go-to?
Yeah, there's a bunch of free resources. I know Google has some. I believe MIT has posted some free, like just general AI training. You don't necessarily need to get to a point where you're training models, but where this is the direction that's going, sort of understanding how AI models are developed and, what is the difference, or if at all, between machine learning and a GPT and all those sorts of things. The other piece would be, go join a free like learn to code course, especially the ones that aren't core Salesforce. Like go take a Python course. There's a bunch of them that are free online. More just to learn programmatic thinking and sort of learn some of the core tenets of computer science around sort of resource efficiency and those sorts of things. Even if you're not learning Apex, I think digging into just how to think like a developer a little bit more can help teams start to get down to some of the studs within the ecosystem.
I would also say, like, from a particularly, I'm just as like the admin in the room, like from a particularly like Salesforce perspective, like Trailhead is a great place to start for me. I really see, and we kind of touched on it earlier in the webinar, is like Sweep as a way to enable somebody to sort of punch above their weight when it comes to being able to accomplish things in Salesforce. And I think it's a great resource. We have some free access that you can get on by just go into our website and sign up, and you can start playing around and really get a sense there. I also saw Betty just asked a question. So our example means you have many users connected to Sweep. Pricing wise, what does it mean? It's a great question. When it comes to people who are just going to look and comment on your Salesforce work, that's actually totally free, right? So if I wanted to use the visualization of Sweep as like an onboarding tool for new hires to really understand how their org works, and to give feedback, or to loop in a VP of sales that I don't intend to ever make changes to my configuration, but it's great for them to understand what I'm working on and have that kind of like shared reality of like, this is exactly how our Salesforce org works. And so if you saw when I was clicking through, it's kind of like displayed in plain English so that people can understand it. So those types of users, there's no additional charge. There's only additional charge for the types of users that are going to go in and make changes. And all the pricing is on the website. So you can see that there as well, Betty.
Awesome. And just at that, I think we're at about time. So there's no more questions anyway, so we can call it there. Benjamin, Colby, thank you so much for that. That was really, really insightful. And I would imagine that a lot of people will be checking this out.
Seth, well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a wonderful day wherever you are.